up a dive. Feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's so I remember I share and subscribe. Join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the group. Untold Radio Network, the secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Welcome to the Sasquatch Outpost podcast, and we are episode 49. And I've got a great show today. I'm really excited about my guest. I've had her on before, but we're going to talk about something completely different than we did last time. If you've never subscribed, please do that. Hit the like button. That helps the Untold Radio Network move up and become more visible. And we appreciate you guys joining us tonight from all over the world. I know we've got listeners and viewers in Australia, in Europe, and in the US. So we're excited about that. Just a reminder that next week I'll be interviewing Dave Paulides, and we'll be talking about his newest book on Washington State, missing people in Washington State. And Dave has made the statement that these are some of the most bizarre cases he's ever investigated. So tune in. We'll take a little departure from our Bigfoot research to take advantage of Dave being available, and we'll come back the week after that with more Sasquatch. So my guest today is Sybilla Irwin. I've had Sybilla on before, but we just spoke about her citing paintings that she does of listening to eyewitnesses and then drawing and painting what they've described so that they have an evidence in pictorial form of what they saw. And she Sybilla is a world-class artist. She's a very credible Bigfoot researcher with an incredible amount of experience, and she is a friend to the forest people. So I'm going to bring Sybilla in. Thanks for being with us again, Sybilla.
You're so welcome, and thank you for inviting me. I love your show.
Absolutely. I consider it a privilege every time we can get you on. And so this time, though, we're not going to talk about your drawings. We're going to talk about you and the experiences you have had, and you've had some. And I think when I first met you, the thing that I remember hearing about you first was that now I knew Dennis Full and I knew Shannon, and I knew that they had been a part of an habituation project called the Erickson Project in Crittenden, Kentucky, where there was a situation where there was a home in a rural farm area that had had tremendous Sasquatch activity over a couple of generations, actually. And long story, but this property was purchased for the purpose of having researchers on the property full time so that they could document things that they would see and hear regarding Sasquatch. So the Erickson Project went on for 5 years. They did get some pretty amazing footage, audio and video, and had some incredible experiences. So when that project ended, my understanding, Sybilla, was that you then came in. I don't know if it was right away or after time had passed, or how did that happen for you?
I think the property sat for 2 years without anyone living there. And then the team that I was with, we were looking for a place because like we were also close with Dennis and Shannon, and he was reporting to us how successful they were being. And occasionally he would show us some footage of what they were getting. And so the team that I was with, we're all friends with Dennis and Shannon. We all just decided, well, let's look for some property where we can do basically what the Erickson Project was doing, because they were so successful. And you know how hard it is to gather data. And if you have a property, then you can kind of control, or at least try to control who's
there.
Right. And try to keep, other people out if you, anyway. So we were looking for property. We had been looking for property for, years. And then one day someone actually went by the Crittenden house and discovered a for sale sign there. So they immediately got back with us and said, I actually got with Dennis and said, hey, that property's for sale. And so that, sent off bells and whistles. We never dreamed that we'd be able to get that property. So
to go back.
So Dennis talked to Adrian, and then one of the team members said, well, I'll buy it. And it was kind of understood from the beginning that I would be the one that would go live there, because I was single and my children are grown. And so I'll never forget that day when the call came in that the property was ours. And I was working as a full-time teacher, and I already had, a contract for the next year. And I just went and told him, I won't be here. I'm going to Kentucky. And I moved everything.
Did you have somebody funding you for the time you were there? Because obviously you couldn't live on nothing. So the mortgage, of course, was paid by the owner and utilities. And so I had to come up with, my living expenses, food, and I had a truck payment and an RV payment and, other things. So we looked for funding, and that was our hope, is that we would be able to find funding, but we never did. So unfortunately, because we needed equipment and someone to fund me, but it just didn't happen. So I ended up having to go, get a job and go into work, and that kind of hampered. Like I told you earlier when we were speaking, I probably have 6 months worth of video, thermal video footage that's not been looked through, because
the amount of time it takes. It's a
Yeah,
full-time job just looking through, I mean,
it
just
is. It is.
reviewing audio and video. And I literally recorded audio pretty much every night, unless it was just pouring down rain.
So the context, I'm not going to show a picture of this property because I don't want to divulge where it is, but the context is this is rural Kentucky, and it's not like it's out in the middle of nowhere. There's farmhouses
Right.
all around, but the way the lay of the land is, there's these hollows, they call them hollers, that were, that kind of ran between all these farm properties, and it was thick trees and undergrowth. And so my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Sybilla, is they would move through these hollers where they could stay hidden. And it was thick. I mean, you could easily stay hidden down in there. So the houses tended to be up on top of the ridges, and the roads were on top of the ridges. And so to get footage, you would have to go down close to the tree line or into those trees, right? To catch them.
And that's how the Crittenden property was. The house was up there by the road. And literally the road is so close to the house that you could spit a watermelon seed probably and hit it.
Yeah.
And it's just a little 1-lane road too. It's not a big 2-lane.
Because there wasn't a whole lot of room on top of that ridge to build a road and a house.
And the house behind the house just literally sloped down into it, down into the creek. The property didn't go all the way down to the creek. It was maybe 300 feet, down to that berm. There was anyone who's familiar with the Crittenden project knows that there was a berm down there, and that Sissy, who used to feed them, would walk on that little berm and then put food down. And so I just continued to do that.
And the history was, so the Sissy and her husband lived on that property, Roger. And when Adrian first acquired it, but Sissy had been there, and I guess her mom had been there before her.
Yes, they grew up there, and her mom. You know how a lot of people will dump scraps just on the other side of the fence, and grease and stuff, leftovers that have kind of gone, sour. That's what her mom was doing, and she was inadvertently, drawing these things there.
Yeah.
And so I guess when Mom realized that she eventually saw them and she was feeding them, she just kept doing it. And I think Sissy's first encounter was at the outhouse. Like she was out the outhouse.
Oh boy.
And saw, I don't know if it stuck its head around the corner or what, but that's when she first saw them. And so then Sissy kind of grew up with, it was a family thing. And like you said, it was multi-generational. So after her mom left and gave the house to Sissy, then Sissy continued to feed them. And she was extremely protective of them as well. And it wasn't Sissy, the BFRO got involved because it was the neighbors. The neighbors are actually the ones who...
because they were seeing them too, I guess.
They were seeing them too. And actually that still happened while I was living there as well. That was still happening.
And from what I remember Dennis telling me, maybe you as well, that there was obviously a family group of them there. There was a big male that I guess you guys didn't see very often. And then mostly the female and the younger ones were the ones that would tend to come out to get the food. And there is some significant footage that they caught during the Erickson project. A lot of people have poo-pooed it, said it's a Chewbacca mask and, all this stuff. And I tell people, okay, with all due respect to Roger and Sissy, there's no way with their level of education and background that they could build a suit that looks like this juvenile Sasquatch. Even the Sasquatch that's sleeping, build a suit that breathes, there's just no way. That was not who they were. And so anyone that thought they could do that is mistaken. It's just like saying Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson built this suit.
Yeah.
There's no way. There's no way they could have. Nobody could have in '67 for the Patterson film. But so they had a lot of experiences. The Sasquatch. It was Dennis chooses not to call it a habituation. He calls it a repeat visitation location where they would often come. Okay, so it's terminology, but they repeatedly came and ate on this property whatever people put out, and they would also do things. I remember, I don't know if this ever happened to you guys, Dennis talking about, maybe it was, they left the property. I can't remember why. Maybe it was prior to the Erickson project, but the Sasquatch came and beat the daylights out of the vehicle with big sticks and stuff, and just busted up this vehicle that was parked in the drive. Or in other times, they would pick the vehicle up and they would put it over the railroad tie, so the high centered it, and you couldn't get it off. And so stuff like that, I mean, shows their tremendous strength. So all that's background.
And those events usually followed Sissy getting too close. Getting too close to, I mean, it was always precipitated by something that they had done.
Something they didn't like.
Yes. And it was the male in particular. Apparently you could tell when the male was around, and even the like the air was just tense. And I did experience that a couple of times where I started out my back door for some reason, and then just immediately turned around and came back in because it was oppressive.
Something was
absolutely, yeah. And apparently, even the female Sasquatch were very tense when this thing was around, because the male, from what Dennis and Shannon said, did not want them interacting with people at all. Like they were kind of going against his wishes when they would come up and interact. Yeah,
it's like an abused wife, that has to sneak around. And but I know the male killed at least one of the dogs on the property at one point, and these were like pit bulls or something. And so
they were big dogs.
Yeah, and that too. That just goes along with what we know about Sasquatch. They just don't like dogs. But the male was apparently very territorial, very protective of his family, and and
was massive. Apparently, it had its head. Just his head alone was about the size of a 5-gallon paint bucket.
And he never hurt any people, though. The whole time they were there. People would go down and they would get in that tree stand, and he would walk up below it, and he could reach up and he could touch the tree stand. If he had wanted to drag him off of there, he could have easily, but he would just walk up and touch it and scare these people. I can't remember one of the guys that Dennis had go down there who was kind of doubtful, and he wasn't down there long, and he came running back up the hill completely white. And Dennis is like, "What's going on?" He says, "Man, something walked right up to the tree and touched my tree stand." And as soon as I figured it was gone, I was out of that tree stand. But he could be aggressive. He just never hurt any people. So so all that's background to you coming. So what I'd love to hear is, what was your experience like? And then we're going to talk about some other time you spent in the Cherokee National Forest after that. But tell us about Cryptid.
When we first got there, of course, no one had lived there for 2 years. And so we had a tremendous amount of work to do to the house. And the yard was, there was grass and brush like 4 and 5 feet tall. You couldn't get a mower through it, so we had to hire someone to come, bush hog it, and then you could only do a certain portion of it. There was the part that led down to the berm. I literally had to hack. I just took days, and I with a machete and hacked my way a trail down to the berm, and that's how. And
2 years is all it took for that to happen.
Yeah, and there was stuff growing up way above my head. And literally I just had to, each day I would just take a machete and do, just a little portion, and finally I got it all cleared. But there was on this property, there was the house, and then there was an old trailer home that was still there. And I guess they stored stuff. I mean, maybe someone originally lived in it. I don't know, but it was all falling apart and stuff. But we kind of used it to hide the thermal camera in there. And,
okay.
We stored a couple of things, but and you could see there were places on the corner where Roger had literally shot at these creatures, like with buckshot. you could see it still there, right there on the trailer.
Yeah, that went a long way towards building goodwill.
Yeah.
Shoot at
Roger shot at him like multiple times.
Hmm.
There was a T-post on one of the corners that Dennis and Tom and Greg, I don't know if Greg, maybe not Greg, but Dennis and Tom had, how a T-post, they drive them deep into the ground.
Yeah.
And they tried, they wiggled that thing every way, but they could not get it out. They could not get it out. Well, one of the funniest things, and I think I sent you a picture of it, is there's one morning I came out, there was also a little compost pile right there that Layla Highcheck, when she had lived there, had started. And so I continued to use that compost area, and it had a little fence around it. So I came out to throw some stuff on the compost pile, and I noticed there was a puddle filled with water there because we'd had some rain. And I stood there going, what's that? And then I realized something had pulled that T-post out of the ground, like just very week after they left.
And left the hole.
Left the hole, but I never found the T-post. Like I could never find
Let me see if I can find that, where I put that picture. Let's see. Make sure. Let's see, which one is it? Here it is.
And I looked all over.
So this is the hole.
That's the hole.
So it yanked that out. and you couldn't find the T-post?
Never. And I walked all over the property, and I even went down to the creek, and I could never find the T-post. Like it literally just disappeared into thin air. But it was fascinating, and I remember how excited I was. I remember I ran into the house and I said, "Guys, they realized this. We wanted this to be gone, and they took it. They took care of it."
Yeah, I've had friends working campsites here in Colorado as camp host, and at the end of each campsite is usually a post or a pole concreted into the ground. And they would come out, and one of those would be pulled out of the ground and just tossed on the side. And there's just no way. I mean, the unbelievable superhuman strength.
Yeah, and Tom and Dennis, they're strong. They're strong men. They tried.
And they couldn't get it out.
They couldn't get it out. They could get it to wiggle, but they could not pull it out.
That's crazy.
That's two men.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I used to put eggs, I would sometimes put a dozen eggs. I mean, and I wouldn't break them, of course. I would set them in that compost pile, and just to see what would happen. And they were never, like, you could tell when like a raccoon or something else got to them, because they would break them and eat them right there. But there were times when I would put a dozen eggs down there, and you'd have 9 eggs missing. Like
so they took them and ate them somewhere else.
Right. Like maybe 3 would be broken, like probably something else got them. But then there'd be 9 eggs. And then, so of course I'd start looking for where the shells were. And sometimes I would find shells down, like way below the berm on the creek. I'd sometimes find a shell here or there, like in the forest. But I thought that was, so what is that? It has to be something with hands to carry away.
Now, I wonder if they just pop those in their mouth,
and
shoot them up, and then just spit out the shells afterwards.
That would be my guess, because there's a lot of minerals in eggshells.
I know they love eggs, and they love chickens if they can get them. So I've had friends who had their normal chickens in the chicken coop, and then they had a little kind of a coop by itself that had a door with a latch, and they came out one day and it was all latched, and they opened it up and they were missing 4 or 5 of those chickens, but they had taken them out and then they had closed the door and relatched it. And a raccoon doesn't relatch your latch for you. They're just, and they would eat them. They would eat the chickens on the spot if they could get them. The raccoon would. So yeah. So
and the very also during that first week or two, 2 a.m, something stomped across the front porch. The front porch was wooden, and something went bam, bam, like 3 steps, bam, bam, bam. And here's the weirdest thing. It sounded like it had a water bottle that it was squeezing, like an empty water bottle. You know how that's
like
that
crinkle, crinkle?
Yes. And I remember calling Dennis Full and telling him about, something stomping across the porch. And I told him about and I said, here's the crazy thing. And I told him, and he just said, oh my God. He said, Sybilla, we just had an expedition and something was walking through camp squeezing a plastic bottle. What the heck?
What the heck? Yeah. What do they like the feel or the sound of that or something? But it's funny that they're walking through camp squeezing it or walking across the porch. It's like they want you to hear that, crank, 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 crank. That's
it's
really
beyond bizarre. It is beyond bizarre.
Is. Because they so much of what they do is bizarre. Let me put this up. This is some of the tree structures you sent me. This is really amazing.
Now this is
crazy.
This I know it's gorgeous, isn't it? And this is not from Crittenden. This is from kind of south central Texas.
Okay.
It's, I was in the Denver airport coming home from an expedition, and I had a BFRO patch on my camera bag, and the man I was sitting next to, I'm kind of one of those people that I just start conversations with people, and I have a friendly face or something. And so him and I just started up a conversation, and he was a fireman and police officer, and he currently had his own security team, and so we're talking, and he feels very comfortable with me, and I'm with him, and he looks down at my bag and he says, you seem like such an intelligent, reasonable, logical person. He said, can you tell me about that patch on your bag? Do you believe in that? And I said, well, not only do I believe in that, I've seen it myself. And he was like, and he kind of rubbed, he had a beard, he kind of rubbed his face for a moment, and he said, okay. He said, something happened to me 2 weeks ago, and I have never, and he says, and I haven't told a single soul, and I don't know what to do with what happened to me. And he says, he told me, he said, you have to understand, I'm a veteran. I have been shot at in multiple scenarios, in the military and with, in the law enforcement. He said, I have never experienced fear like I did 2 weeks ago. He was hog hunting in a field by himself. He'd hunted this field for years. It was his friend's property. He said, but I've never experienced the type of fear that I experienced in my entire life. And he kind of told me about it. And so I got his number. And then a few weeks later, I met him at that property. And so we started, he showed me where he was. And he didn't think he was going to get out of there.
Huh.
He thought he was going to die that night. So we start walking the property. I immediately walked to this it was like a little ravine, and then it had kind of an island in the middle. So I walked down into this ravine, and I was walking around, and I walked back up into this little island that was created between the two, and I found the structure. And I called him over, and he was just dumbfounded. He said, "What?" He was just speechless. And I said, "So, what do you think this is?" And I knew what it was, but he was like, "I've never seen anything like that in my life." And he said, "And I know for a fact that there's nobody on this property." And then we found some footprints. There's a little cattle kind of little pond, for their water. And close to where and we walked that entire water line, and close to where the water line meets the little forest area, I found this massive butt print. I mean, it was about. I mean, I did, and I had I had casting material. It would have taken.
It would have taken everything you had and more,
It would have.
probably.
Oh, it would have taken 15 bags. It was. I mean, and
Wow.
you could see the hair. I mean, it was
Oh,
this
wow.
butt. This butt was so perfectly imprinted in this mud, and then it looked like this female sat down in the mud, and you could see all the hair. You could see where the butt crack was. It was,
Wow.
but and here right next to it she must have been carrying an infant or a toddler, and then it looked like she sat the baby down and its feet sunk into the mud. There were two really deep impressions, and then it was like, oh, that's not a good idea, and she picked it back up. And I did try to cast those two, and you can actually see like a little. I mean, this was maybe
Yeah.
4 inches. The foot was 4 inches long, and the heel was about maybe 2.5 inches wide. And then you can feel like where the ankle bone was.
Yeah,
So
and which is an interesting thought that they're young, because I interviewed Kenny Collins last week, and Kenny has done more plaster casting, he and Jason, than any two people I know, and it's all up in the flat top areas around these couple of lakes, and he gets these footprints this small, walking next to a bigger set of footprints, and even the little ones walking in line. But that would be a child of one, maybe, and yet so their young must mature really fast, that they're out walking
yeah,
years before we are as
yeah.
children.
Well,
So
and one of the points that he made too is he looked around. There's, we in Texas we have mesquite trees, and
uh-huh.
they have thorns that will go through a bicycle tire or a flip flop, or I mean they may even go through a car tire. I don't know. And he said to me, and he's like I said, he's a police officer, he's a
Yeah.
former police officer, and I said, so tell me about this. And he said, there's no way. He said, first off, nobody I know, has a butt that wide. And of course, he's
Yeah.
a jokester too. But he said, nobody would allow their child to walk
No.
anywhere
No.
near on this property without shoes on.
Man,
Too
too bad
dangerous.
you couldn't have cast that butt. That would have been a one off in the world butt print.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
But
it would have taken, you would have had to build a form around it and
yeah,
had to really
yeah,
kind of spend days there doing it. And I really wished I could have, but
yeah.
I had to be
Well,
back at
just the
work.
fact that did you get a picture of that?
I did, and it's on that computer that died. But
Oh, darn.
I know. But I'll see if I can find them. But
Butt print.
yeah,
Wow, that's something.
a big hairy butt print too.
A big hairy butt. Yeah. Now, was this also in Texas, or was this
No, that's in
uh
Kentucky.
in Kentucky? Okay. So
Yeah,
tell us about this
and
picture.
this was clearly created by hands, like only something. The tip of this tree, in fact, to the left of us, you can see where the leaves are kind of bundled up.
Yeah.
The part of the branch that's coming off, that's literally the top of an arched tree. So this tree was, and it was a good one of those like this, about this thick. This tree was,
Hmm.
the tip of it was brought around. You can see it kind of coming through the middle, like that is the middle, like the middle of you can see it because there's the tree, and then there's this branch coming down. That is the top of the tree wrapped around and lashed around itself and then out.
I
I
think
am,
this maybe gives a better view.
yeah, I have never in my life seen a tree lashed like that.
Interesting. Yeah, trees, that doesn't happen naturally. No other animal
No,
does that.
no.
So it was lashed around the vertical one that's going up and down.
Yeah, I should have sent you a picture of like the whole thing where you could see the arch. The arch was massive. I mean, it was probably 8 or 9 feet up over your head, and then the
Okay.
tip, and then this is what you're seeing is the tip.
going down next to that tree is the tip?
Yes, like it's brought, like the whole tree was just brought down and then lashed
Oh,
around this tree
to hold that tip
to
down.
hold the arch, to hold that arch, yeah,
Okay.
into an arch. It was insane.
That is insane. I've seen them do a lot of things to keep the arch. I mean, you've probably seen this. Arches that are 15 feet up
Yes,
and they come down and then they're jammed in the ground a foot to keep it in the arch shape, or
yes.
stuck under a rock or stuck under a tree or something like this, wrapped around something. It just doesn't
The
happen naturally.
No, there was a. In fact, it's on my Facebook. If you go to Sybilla Irwin, my Facebook, there's a picture of me on them, and we were looking at some structures, but on that same property. And the reason we were there, we were doing an investigation because some children had been playing and they saw the Sasquatch. So we went, and it was the
Hmm.
grandpa's property, and he's a logger. I mean, that's one of the things that he did. And so when I saw this arch, I walked over to it and I started taking pictures of it. And he came up and he stood there and looked at it and he said, "Oh my God, this is on my own property and I'm a logger." And he said, "This does not happen. This is not natural." And what
Yeah.
they had done is they had taken this tree and they like here's another tree right here. They had brought the arch and it was the pressure. They had bent it so it was like spring loaded, and the top of the tree actually came like this. So it's this
So it,
arch. It's
oh, okay.
pressure loaded and then it comes out like this. So the top of the tree actually, and it's down on the
Hmm.
ground.
Hmm.
And it's the pressure of it being up against the other tree that was
Yeah.
holding it. It
And
was
trees
beautiful.
trees don't naturally put themselves under pressure against something.
No,
They
something.
follow the path of least resistance.
Yes, no, something had to grab the top of that,
Hmm.
that top of the tree and
Yeah,
sorry,
it's amazing.
bring it down.
Tell us about this one.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
This is Cindy Dozen she's an investigator from British Columbia. And she came to Crittenden and stayed with us for maybe 4 or 5 weeks. It's crazy. It was so great to have her. So this was on, all around Crittenden, the house, it was mostly farms and ranches. There was a
Uh-huh.
five family ranch right across the street from me. And they would hear things, but a lot of the things that happened around there, we had kept it so quiet that I was there and what I was doing there, that it really wasn't until I was there for a few years before they kind of told me about some of the stuff that had happened.
Huh.
But this property is 2 miles from the Crittenden property as the crow flies. And it just happened to be one of those serendipitous things that I ran into the man who owns this property, and his cabin literally was right along a creek. Like the creek wound right in front of his house and then to the side of his house. And this was back there on his property because he gave me full permission, of course, to wander his property anytime I wanted. And so Cindy and I found these two double X's. So this is about 2 miles from the Crittenden house.
Interesting.
What's really interesting about Eric's house is that creek. There's a creek that emptied. Actually, two of them came together and emptied right in front of his house. And on one of those creeks, a report was filed to the BFR database of a young man. Now, and think about this. This is a creek just that empties out at Eric's house. It was a young man filed this report. He was on his grandfather's property, and he didn't have a cell phone. He was just creaking, and he heard some splashing up above, and even he had to get permission to go on his granddad's land. And so he's just creaking, looking for lizards and stuff. And he hears this heavy splashing up ahead of him, and he knows that that's not right because nobody should be on his grandfather's property. So he sneaks up behind this berm, and he slowly looks over, and there are two Sasquatches. looks like a big male, and then there's a little one. And of course, he's terrified at first because this creature is massive. But he said the longer he watched this male watching the little one, he said the more human it became, because this creature was watching the male, watching the baby play in the water, just like he watches his daughters play in the water. And it would, every once in a while, it would turn his head and just kind of look up and down the creek and then just go right back to watching this little one. And he happened to be, he watched him for like maybe 25 minutes. And then they started moving away. Oh, he also saw the little one stack rocks in the creek, which is something that, a lot of people have found stacked creeks and, stacked rocks in the creeks. Anyway, they started moving away, and he started trying to follow them. And that's when he got busted. And that's when the male kind of made a vocalization, and the little one ran down to the creek and up into the hill. And the little one, the big one turned and looked at him like, okay, if you're going to follow something, follow me. And of course, he was not going to follow the male. I don't think he even had a pocket knife on him. So he just got out of the woods as quickly as he could. And then when he got back home, he was white as a ghost, and he told his mom and then what had happened. And they said, oh, you've got to file a report. And so I picked up that report. And anyway, so just that was again 2 miles from the Crittenden location. So
how many people get to watch a Sasquatch for 30 minutes? That's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I know.
What a research experiment that was.
Oh, it was fabulous. And all just within 2 miles, really. I think, and see, Sissy and Roger bought a home 2 miles away. And so the research continued both at their house and at the Crittenden house.
Have you ever thought, this thought just occurred to me, if you were out in the woods and you had an opportunity to watch a Sasquatch that wasn't aware of you, what would you be looking for in that experience? If you had 10 minutes, 15 minutes to just watch without being detected, what would you be looking for?
Since I'm an artist, like yourself, I would be memorizing all the details of their face and of their hair and how their body moved. And I would just be trying to take little mini movies so that I could get back home and try to draw everything that I saw to its closest detail. Yeah.
And I think I would watch whatever they were doing. I would want to watch and say and look for indications of their intelligence, because I believe they're highly intelligent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they don't just hang out in the woods like a gorilla. They're doing things when they're out there. So, interesting. Okay, so let's see. We got another one here. What was this?
This is like an A structure, and it was. Here's another one of those really strange kind of researchers. It happens to researchers all the time. Some people would like to call a coincidence.
Yeah.
So, when you live on a property where these things are, you have to be so consciously aware, because what they do is generally so subtle that if you're not paying attention and you're not photographing every little thing, they move stuff around constantly. Or, they'll do something like I had a 5-gallon bucket outside right on the corner of the house, and it would just go missing. And then so I'd go to look for it, and it, of course, it'd be gone. And then I find it either on the property, or sometimes it would be on it'd be back at the doorstep or something. And so you're constantly having to be totally, diligent of paying attention. And so I was, for the most part, every once in a while I'd be stumped, like, oh my gosh, was that there yesterday? You can't photograph everything. But anyway, so no. Ronnie Powell Ronnie was one of the team members. And so she was also having activity in her area around her house. And so she said, she sent me a picture, and she said, Sybilla, I found an A structure, and she sent me a picture of it. And so I thought, well, that is really cool. And so then the next day I'm walking down to the berm to check to see if the food's been taken. And what do I find? Just to the left of the trail it's this A thing. I'm like, well, I'll be dang, of course. It's just one of those weird
Yeah,
coincidences.
somehow they heard you. But so many people would hike right past this, never even
Right.
notice it,
Yeah.
wondering how that got to be in an A with even the cross stick, and
The cross stick. Exactly. Yeah.
so many
Yeah.
people wouldn't even notice. Which is
No,
why people don't believe that they're there, and I'll show them things, and then they'll say, "Oh, I've seen stuff like that," and I thought, "But did you never wonder how that got to be that way?" No. Okay. Well,
I know. Well, after living on the property for 5 years, I completely understood why so many of these people in the area have no idea these things are around, because if you're
yeah,
not paying attention to this kind of
right.
stuff, you're not going to even see it. I
And
totally get
most
it.
of it's that their movement is at night, and people are inside the house and they're not paying
Right.
attention. So,
Well, and I
um,
do think that they do a lot of reconnaissance. They know exactly.
yeah,
I mean, humans' lives are so patterned. They go to sleep at the same time. They wake up at the
yeah,
same time. They go to work. So if they want to avoid you, it'd be pretty easy.
yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, is this something you cast?
No, this was cast by Layla.
Okay.
This was, and I just wanted to show the size. This was actually, I think, taken from that property, and it was left in the safe. There was a big safe
Hmm.
there that kind of went with the house, and there was all sorts of cast, different things in there. And this was taken from the berm, and it was about 16, I think, 16 and a half inches.
That is so clear. Those toes are absolutely clear.
Yeah,
No, it's
yeah.
crazy.
I mean, it just gives people a sense of just really how big. I mean, I
Yeah.
have like a size 6 foot, so I don't have a huge foot, but it just does give you the size of. I mean, look at the heel, the width of it.
Would you say that was the female, you think, or the male?
I would think that's probably the female.
Okay.
I bet you the male is probably 18 or
Even
19.
bigger. Yeah.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
bigger. Let's see what else I've got on this one. Okay.
So when I first got there, I wanted to be outside all the time because I felt like just to give them opportunities to get to know me and to see me and to, just learn who I was so that they would be comfortable. And the driveway to this house was just covered in weeds, but it had like a rock base like that.
Okay.
And so I decided one of my projects would be to pull up all the weeds, which took me with my hands. So it took me about a week to do. One of the mornings I woke up and there was this small impression. It's not very big. I think it was only about 10 inches long. In that kind of gravel area, and it was a small trackway that kind of headed towards the back door. And it doesn't look, it's so hard
Hmm.
to photograph any kind of footprint, as you well know. They're
Yes,
just
it
so
is.
difficult. So I don't know if this doesn't do it justice, but the ground was really pushed in. And another really odd thing is I had another bucket. It was kind of like a mop bucket, and it was turned upside down. And there were 4 plants just set
Hmm.
on top of that bucket. 4 little plants.
Yeah. And so much of what they do is just um meticulous. I mean, they're very careful many
Yeah,
times about what they do. And you're thinking, if it's the male doing that, I mean, he's got to have fingers like sausages. I mean, how does
yeah,
he move tiny little, like braiding horses' manes and stuff?
right,
I'm
yeah,
thinking it has to be juveniles or females that are doing that, because
yeah,
males' hands would be too big.
yeah.
Do you have an iPhone or an Android phone?
I have an iPhone.
How recent is it?
I think it's the 13.
Okay. The 13 has, and you've maybe played around with this, but the 13 has LiDAR, which is like a radar. And so you could take a picture of this footprint with the LiDAR. Then you could take that image, that file, pick it up, and you can turn it around and you can see the depth of it. And you can look at it you can flip it around, look at it at different angles. LiDAR is an amazing tool for us as researchers. You can walk around something and do a 3D picture of it, and then later on take that picture and turn it all around. And so most of us don't even use half of what's on our phone. So
Yeah,
But
I
look
didn't
up the
even know.
LiDAR. Yeah.
I didn't even know that was on there. Yeah,
Yeah. And
that
you
would
could
have
get,
been
yeah, it would have
something.
been perfect. And you can get extra apps from the App Store that even use the LiDAR more extensively. But anyway, let's see. Is there another one here? Oh, that's the hole that we talked about.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
This is interesting.
yeah. This is on the way down. This is the backyard on the way down to the berm. I had a little. I made a little. Sometimes I would make a little fire there, and I would sit out there at night.
Uh-huh.
Um, and one evening, I just there was a couple of other pictures, but this is actually the best one of an orb that I saw.
Hmm. And you saw it with your naked eye,
Yes.
and you can tell this is not a light phenomenon because, as you said earlier, it's behind that bush. The bush is partially obscuring the
Yeah.
orb. I
Yeah.
blew this up so you can see even better. It's definitely lit. It's lit from within.
Yeah.
And did it
What
move while you watched it?
it was moving, and there were some other pictures I took, but they didn't come out at all. This was like
Hmm.
the best
That's a
one.
really good picture. Was it
What do
completely round, like perfectly round?
it did seem to be, to my eyes, yes, it did seem to
Okay.
be round. What are your thoughts on this? What do you think orbs are, Jimmy?
I believe they're associated with Sasquatch. Let me show you a
I do
picture
too.
that goes along with this. I was out with my staff. This is my wife. I had all my staff, all women, took them out in the woods, and straight ahead of Daphne at low down, we were seeing eye glow. So she's looking through binoculars, I think, trying to pinpoint the eye glow. And one of my other staff behind her just kind of took a picture just for, hey,
Yeah.
it'd be fun to take a picture of us out here in the night. Now, up between the two tall trees, in the middle of the two tall trees, she caught this orb. And this is, when I blow it up, this is the orb. It was about the size of a basketball,
Yeah.
but same color as yours.
Yeah.
And you can almost see a face in the middle of this orb. And
Wow.
so like 10 seconds after she took this picture, I thought that's a good idea. And I took a picture in the exact same direction, and there was nothing in my picture. And so what that tells me is that the orbs come and go and move, for their own reasons. But
Yeah.
I don't know what they are, Sybilla. My question is, are they intelligent, or are they like a drone? They're manipulated from another intelligence
Yeah.
source.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Or is it literally just them, like kind of dematerialized? And
Or
I
is
know,
it
I know
possibly
people's heads are going to be like blown from that, but I really do. I mean, I've seen some. I mean, on this property, there were times when I was walking down to the berm, like say in the wintertime when there's not all this, foliage. When I'd be walking down to the berm, and I would hear to my left something paralleling me, but I couldn't see it, and the brush wasn't shouldn't have concealed whatever
because
was.
it was that close? You could hear that it was
It was that close,
close.
and the foliage wasn't that thick. I should have been able to see what was there, and
Yeah.
I couldn't. So it was invisible to me. And then I also had a similar kind of cloaking experience when I was in the Cherokee
Hmm.
National Forest. That was so bizarre. I was sitting in a camp chair, kind of facing the road, and all of a sudden it was like someone took a 5-gallon bucket of gold glitter and dropped it like maybe 30 feet from the air, like
Huh.
it wasn't above, it was just like almost like a place opened up, and then someone was pouring glitter out of, and this is in broad daylight, like
So it's
pouring
just kind
glitter,
of like falling
a
down.
shimmery gold like glitter just shimmering down.
Wow.
Like what the heck,
What
and you're.
was there anything on the ground later?
No, because I did get
Oh,
up. After I
wow.
kind of overcame my shock, I got
Yeah.
up, and I was like, what did I just see? I mean, I've had so many of those, and you probably have too, where you're literally just saying to yourself, what did I just see? What
What
in
was
the
that?
world? Yeah. So I don't
And
know.
far from being, many people imagine Sasquatch being this terrifying, massive brute creature that just charges through the woods and rips people apart. And so much of what I've discovered Sasquatch is like is these quiet little incidents, like you're glittering or little orbs
Yeah.
or sounds around you, and you're like, wow, for being such a massive creature, they're really quiet or they're really careful. And it's special. I mean, when they're around and they're wanting us to know they're around, they do things that are, you wouldn't expect a creature that size would do.
Yes. And on that same property, in fact, not very far from where that orb was, just to maybe 20 yards, just closer to the house, Nathan and I set up a little camp, and we were going to spend the night. Nathan is my son, and he
Mm-hmm.
came and lived with me at the Cryptid property for about 6 months. And so we created a little area down there. I set up my little two-person tent. He set up his hammock. We dug a Dakota fire pit so we wouldn't ruin our night vision. And we did some hamburgers and hot dogs down there. And I had a recorder going, and we were just sitting there in the, just quiet. And I heard some brush pop just below the berm, and I just turned softly and I said, "You hear that?" He goes, "Yeah." So then we were just waiting, and nothing happened then for 10 minutes. And then Nathan took a stick, maybe like an inch in diameter, and it was obviously really dry. And when he broke it, it sounded like a shotgun going off.
Yeah.
And when he did that, to our right, this thing busted like a elephant, and my son went into saying the F-bomb like 500 times in 2 seconds. I mean, this thing, it broke away from us, and it headed right by my neighbor's dog pen. She had a dog pen right there on the fence line, and it sounded like something was killing her dogs. In fact, my first thought was something was attacking her dogs, but it was just this thing running by. The pen scared them so bad that
Wow.
they were that and a dog is so scared, it's like that's dog screaming. And this thing ran. I mean, it shook you could feel this thing running
Shook the
through our
ground. Yeah.
feet. Yeah, through our feet. And it ran down to the bottom of her property. And then all of a sudden, so we're standing there, and Nathan is freaking out. And it's all on recorded too. It's hilarious. Um, and then this thing starts, I think it was popping its teeth. I mean, it started
Like
doing that,
chomping.
but it
Yeah.
was really fast, and it was like so loud. It was,
Wow.
I mean, that had to have been like at least 150 feet away from us,
Wow.
that you
You
could
can
hear
still
this.
hear it.
And when that thing started doing that teeth popping thing, my son was like, "I love you, Mom, but there is no
I'm
way
out
I
of
will
here.
I'm out of here. I'm done with this."
I
And
love you,
so
Mom, but I'm out of here.
I'm not staying down here tonight. And so we
Wow.
went back up into the house and made some hot chocolate. And I said, "Yeah, but you know what? We need to take these hot dogs and put them down there and maybe give them as a gift." But the reason I brought that up is because that the substrate all around us was dry sticks and dry leaves. There's no way, and that's what he kept saying, "Mom, there's no way something that weighed as much as that thing did could have gotten that close to us without us hearing a sound," but it did.
Just quiet, gentle,
Almost like it was
until
floating.
you provoked it or whatever you would call that. And then it sounds
Yeah,
like a rhinoceros running through the woods,
absolutely. And that's what he said. He said, "Mom, that sounded like an elephant." And I
Yeah.
said, to him, I said, "So what lives in Kentucky, Nathan, that would, that weighs that much?" Well, from that point on, he was no longer skeptical of what we were
Yeah.
dealing with. Yeah.
Because it's
You
boom, boom, crash. And it's like as they're running, they're grabbing stuff and breaking it off. I mean, they can make a lot of noise when they want to, or they can make no noise
no
and be
noise.
completely quiet. So that's really interesting. I love that story.
Yeah.
Let me see what else I had on this particular. Okay, here we go.
Oh yeah.
So what's
This is
this?
we put up a thermal. I think I got there in Crittenden in June, and we put this thermal cam up in August.
Okay.
Now we thought, let's not put any thermal cameras. Let's not put any cameras up. Let's just try to build a relationship with these guys. But we were having so much activity that it just kind of Tom couldn't stand it. He said, we got to do this. So he bought an internet thermal camera, and we thought, okay, let's put it in an ice chest. We'll just cut a little hole, and the ice chest will conceal the heat, and there'll just be a hole for the lens. And let's put this in that old trailer house. And we ran like an extension cord to it. And this old trailer house had multiple bedrooms. And so what he did is he put a little shelf in the door of one of the bedrooms that was kind of back. So we put the thermal camera on top of that in the ice chest. And then we put a black curtain in front of it and cut a little hole for the lens.
So just the lens sticking out.
Yeah, well, just the lens. But then there was a curtain on top of that. And then there was a hallway. And then there was a window that we were shooting through a window. This was a really old trailer, and they had those louvered windows. Yeah. So we're literally shooting through a louvered open slot in the louver, down into the berm.
And so did you catch them through all that?
So, no. Well, this camera was only up maybe a week, and then I came out to get the SD card, and this is what I discovered on the camera. The shelf and everything is knocked down on the floor, and you can see to the right there's a stick. That's a tobacco stick, because there's still tobacco growers in Kentucky and in this very area. So this thing, and this trailer window had to have been at least 8.5 feet above the ground. And so something used a tobacco stick to knock that camera down.
Oh.
Now, how did they see it when it was completely covered by a curtain?
I don't know. Listen, I've got a friend. I think I mentioned him to you. He's going to spend 30 days in the woods. He's done this before, and he'll take 20 cameras with him, and he'll put them facing outside the camp and facing in towards the camp, and he'll have a whole setup with solar so that they can keep running. How effective do you think that would be?
It's not going to be effective.
Why not?
Because these things, I don't know if it must be like the range, the spectrum in the range that they can pick up that we can't. And
because even a thermal, which is a thermal's passive. It's not putting anything out. It's just receiving heat.
Yeah. Is it the smell?
Still they saw it.
Is it the smell?
I don't know, but it was inside that cabin, right? It was inside that trailer.
It was inside.
Wow.
And they also seem to understand the focal range of the lens. Now, how is that possible? Especially if they're a gorilla, they don't understand cameras. Right. They don't understand focal ranges. They are so shocking by their intelligence. You just can't fool them. I've tried getting an inch square camera and have the camp 30 feet away. We had a fire pit 30 feet from the camp. We had some chairs, and I clipped it on a chair, come back in the morning, one chair is knocked over, that chair, and the camera's gone. And I'm like, I just can't fool them. Even a 1 inch square camera, they take it. They know what it is. Right.
They must have this hoard of stuff somewhere that they've taken, and they sit around at night and they look at it like, man, check out this one. This one looks really cool. Yeah, but look at this lens. It's like, what do they do with it? I have no idea. But
and we've hid them in dog houses and flower pots and ice chests and grills of the vehicles and under top, wheel wells, and I mean all the places that we have hidden cameras. In fact, at one location, my friend Ron had a table. Like he has a thermal camera and he has a table right outside his tent, and his tent's right there. So the focal point is right here, showing this little table, and he put a big pizza on it, and then right behind that is his tent. And this Sasquatch, you could hear it. It's mad, but it knows not to. Like, how does it know the focal range of that camera? But it will not
get
step
in front of it. It'll stay
It will
behind
not
it.
step. Yes,
And it'll make
it will not.
noise. It'll walk around.
Right, and it's grunting and growling, and it's mad, but it will not step into the focal range of that thermal camera.
And they'll smash the cameras. They'll take them off the tree and smash them. But the only success I've heard is somebody on a property. I saw this through Thinker Thunker, I think. But these people, the Sasquatch were coming on their property. They put this mirror up. They pointed the camera at the mirror, filming back. And so they're filming the image on the mirror, not the image out there. And that seemed to fool them enough that they caught these Sasquatch coming on the property. Yeah. And I thought, okay, maybe you'd have to rig something up in the woods with a mirror and hope that they don't knock the mirror down or the camera, both. Yeah. And see if you can fool them. But the risk is you're gonna offend them, and they won't come back. And so that's always the risk. And when I have a gifting area, I hesitate to put anything out there because they won't come. They won't come.
They don't seem to mind the audio. They don't seem to mind.
They don't care. They don't care about audio. And it's got blinking red lights and stuff. And if you didn't know the difference, you would think that was a camera. But they'll walk around those things and make noise. They don't care. Yeah. Yeah. So
I actually had some audio of one of them coming up on the berm and sleeping.
You could hear it snoring.
You could, it'd be like a little bit of a, kind of thing.
Oh my gosh.
And it was so cool. And when I found it, and it happened two mornings in a row, like around between 4 and 5 in the morning. And there was one obviously sleeping on the berm, and there was one walking around because you could hear brush pop and stuff. So it sounded like two. And I called Dennis and I said, okay, because I knew that they had the footage of the sleeping one. And I said, okay, I'm going to tell you what the breath rate of this thing was. And I told him, and he goes, yep, because it was a lot slower than ours, a lot fewer breaths per minute than ours was.
3 or 4 breaths less than we breathe.
It was quite a few. Yeah, it was really cool.
And they obviously knew that recorder was there. I have to think they knew that recorder was there, and they didn't care.
Yeah, no, they don't. They didn't care about the recorder, not the audio. Yeah, but they didn't do any howling there. Like I never recorded any howling.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now on Eric's property 2 miles away, I did catch some distant howls from there.
But they never did any close-up vocals, like
no
talking,
they would do
anything.
No, they would do wood knocks. Like sometimes I would step out of the back door to head down to the berm, and it'd be like just a single wood knock. Or oftentimes when I put the food in the crate and I'd turn around to walk back to the house,
it's almost like they're saying to each other, "Okay, dinner's here. Come and get it."
Exactly. Yeah. So
now
cool.
I don't want to mix up your experience in Crittenden and Cherokee. I don't know if this was Crittenden or Cherokee.
That's a Cherokee National Forest.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna leave that one for. Okay, so
that's a Cherokee.
Let me take this off and tell me where were these pictures?
This was the very first week I was in the Cherokee National Forest. I was kind of solo camping, and it was early March. Like I was out there by myself.
And that's in Tennessee, right?
Yes, that's in southeastern Tennessee, kind of close to Tellico Plains, Tennessee. One of my favorite.
And you had an
towns.
opportunity to spend a significant amount of time by yourself out there.
Yes, yes. The team would come join sometimes on weekends. They'd be
Okay.
there for a couple of days, but the rest of the time I was just by myself. And when I first got out there, like literally, I drove the whole area. There were no other campers. Like I was the only
Okay.
idiot that was crazy enough
for a long time too, months. So
it really was. Now, sometimes the only time I would see traffic when I first got out there was on like Saturday morning, early in the morning, when the trout fishermen would want to go, get out there really early to their honey holes that they like to fish. And the other time I would see absolutely no one.
did anyone ever come into your camp and say, "What are you doing here?" Or
Well, I had someone come into my camp one time, and I was sitting there by myself, and I hear this car kind of and I walk around my camper, and there's this guy standing there, and he goes, "Are you Sybilla Irwin?"
oh, really?
And
Wow.
I said, yes. And he said, well, I was just up at Expedition Bigfoot with David, and he told me that you solo camping out here. I'd be able to find you.
So he drove around till he found you.
Yeah, it wasn't hard
That's
because I
funny.
was the only RV there. So,
That's
and he
funny.
wanted to tell me about that. This was a place that he used to camp, and that he would always have activity here. So, I mean,
Wow.
he just validated. Yeah. And he was like, are you crazy? I won't stay out here by myself.
And a lot of people say that I won't be out here by myself. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
was going on here in this picture?
So this was just I think a couple of weeks after I was there, and this side of the camper is actually facing the river. And the
Okay.
river is quite some distance away. The river was probably 50 yards away. And I'm just sitting, there's no electricity. You're off
Right.
the grid. There's no cell phone. I did have a satellite. If I had an
So
emergency, I
you're
did have
just
it.
on propane basically, or
Yes, and it would get down
batteries.
into the 20s. There was
Okay.
many mornings I woke up and inside of my camper was like 23 degrees. Um,
Wow.
well, so this was 9 o'clock at night, 9:30. I'm sitting literally out the window. There's a window right by where this happened, and I'm reading. So it's just so quiet, and just out of the blue, it sounded like a shotgun hit, just kind of below where I was sitting. And of course, I jumped up and waited. How you do, you kind of wait to see, well, what's going to happen next. And it was loud. It
So
was really loud.
bang, hit the side of the trailer.
Something
Camper.
that something, and I kind of knew instantly that it was a rock. I mean, I just felt like something just threw a rock, like with some serious force behind it, at my camper.
And that's what this is?
No, that's a completely
Oh.
different. Yeah, no, that was
Okay.
that was a rock. So I would go once a week to the town of Tellico Plains to get water and to get groceries, and to just check in.
Okay.
I'd call my family and just say how things were going.
So you're still
And
alive.
I'm still alive. And then but of course I would lock everything up, because you're driving away from everything you have, really, and so you're sure to lock stuff up. And I came back from my grocery shopping, and I opened the front door, and right there in the middle of the camper is this rock. And how again, it's just one of those things where you're like, how, like how?
Was the camper still locked when you got there?
Oh yeah, it was still locked.
Oh, that's even weirder.
It was still locked. The windows were locked. I always locked everything down before I left. And I tried, 5 ways to Sunday, trying to get that rock into my shoe, because if I said, okay, this somehow wedged itself in my shoe, but I couldn't make that happen either.
No. So for those who are listening, not watching, this rock is about fits in the palm of her hand. It's a decent sized rock, but it's nothing you could slip through a crack in the building or anything. So
no, not at all.
Interesting. Sitting on the floor. Yeah.
Just sitting right there in the middle of the floor. Yeah.
See, this is why I'm convinced they have a sense of humor, because they got in there through a locked door, put that rock down, And now when you walk in, I guarantee they were watching, laughing at your reaction. It's just like Jason Frank goes camping. He's the first one at the campsite, puts up his chair, goes to look for firewood, comes back, and there's a basketball-sized rock in the chair. And he could hear them laughing back in the woods. And anything that's as intelligent as we think they are has a sense of humor to play tricks on people like this.
Yeah.
I think it's cute. I think it's fun that they do this kind of stuff. But,
I do too. It didn't scare me because it was like, well, this is a gift.
It's a mystery though, how they did it. So,
I don't think an ape could do it.
No. So this mark in the middle here is where the rock hit?
Yes.
Okay.
It left a dent, yeah.
Yeah. That was thrown hard.
It was, and it was loud. I mean, if you've ever had anything hit your camper when you're inside, it's loud. And
it's quiet, and there's nobody else around. Like, no. Yeah, it's loud. Yeah.
And you just know what I did, Jim? I think some people might have thrown the door open and, yelled, hey, don't do that. But I kind of stood there and I kind of gathered my thoughts in it. And I just, eventually I think I opened the door and I said, hey, I don't appreciate that. Please don't do that again. This is my home and please don't hurt it. And, I don't try to scare you. Please don't try to scare me. And, it never happened again.
Never happened again.
No, they didn't slap my camper.
I think they listened. They listened to us, and they thought it was funny until you got mad, and they're like, "Okay, we're not going to play that game anymore." Yeah. So,
well, I think I was very respectful. I just said, "Please don't do that." I don't like that. And I told him, I said, I love wood knocks. If you want to communicate with me, please do it through wood knocks. Mm-hmm. And so that did happen, and soft vocalizations. Yes.
Interesting.
And little gifts, they gave me a marble, which I should have sent you a picture of, a little marble. And then also this lanyard was in the same Cherokee National Forest, but in a different campsite. And one of the first things I always do, and I recommend it anytime you're going to be camping, is as soon as you get there and you get set up, clean up your whole area. Like, just like you would, go pick up any trash, because I think that sends a message to them about who you are. Like I would always walk up and down the road, like maybe a quarter mile, just picking up bags of trash. And I think it just, like I said, it gives them an idea of who you are. Plus you get very familiar with, clean up all the area for your campsite or anywhere you're going to be sitting, because a lot of times what they'll do is after you kind of clean up an area, then you'll notice, you'll know for certain when something comes in that was not there before.
Yeah.
So this was
I think it tells them that you care about where they live.
Yes. And you're cleaning up, with the mess that other human beings make.
So it's like a lanyard that you would hang a name tag on or something?
Yeah. Yes, something like that. And it just appeared by where the fire, there was a rock ring that I had cleaned up all around there, and it was not there because I would have noticed it, and it was clean too. I think they've sometimes, I kind of felt like the things they were gifting me with was stuff that they had found that they knew was related to humans, that it was a human kind of thing, and that I would know that I'd appreciate it.
Where in the world do they find a lanyard?
Probably at somebody's campsite or on a trail.
Or a dumpster, or who knows. But
or off a trail.
Yeah. Let's see.
They also gifted me with this was back in Cryptid.
Okay.
Yeah, this was, I think blue jays are beautiful. I know some people get annoyed with them because they're loud and they squawk a lot. But there was
I love them too.
Look at the colors. They're just stunning. There was a family of blue jays that lived right in the backyard, there was a hackberry tree, several hackberries, and they had a nest back there. And I used to see them like a lot. And I was mowing one day, and it was a big yard. So it literally took me, I would do the front half in 1 hour, pause, and then, get some hydrated and then do the second half. And I was doing that. I was taking a little break, and I was sitting on those railroad ties, drinking a bottle of water. and I just kind of, I live by myself, so I was talking to myself, and I might even have said out loud, hey, I haven't seen the blue jays. I wonder where they are. Like, wonder what happened to the blue jays, because I haven't seen or heard them in several weeks. And then a few days later, this poor blue jay is sitting on the chair of my front porch,
And it's
and
dead.
yes, but like rigor mortis had not set in, so it was fresh. Like, because when I picked it up, its head, flopped, and it had a hole right here in its chest, and its tail
Wow.
feathers, and its tail feathers are also gone. And I felt bad because I felt like,
Yeah.
oh, I hope you didn't. I hope you
Hope you
didn't
didn't
kill
kill
this.
this for me.
Yes, I felt so bad. I mean, I'm. What do you do with that? What do you do with that?
Well, and think about it. How do you catch a blue jay with your hand? I mean, it's not easy. I mean, they're fast. My
Yeah.
cat catches them, but he's a cat. It's
Yeah.
just like, well, that's interesting. What did you do with the blue jay?
I put it in the freezer.
Huh.
Yeah.
Decided to
Yeah.
save
I
it for
kept
later before you ate it, huh?
it. I did, in case anybody wanted to see if there was a way to
Yeah.
get DNA off of it or something.
Yeah.
And so I put it in the
Sure.
freezer. And
Yeah.
eventually, like a couple of years later, there was a Native American friend of mine, just mentioned to me, if you ever, get any blue jay feathers, we use them in our ceremonies. And I said, well, I just so happen to have a blue jay in my freezer, so I did share those feathers with him.
Did they take the wing feathers?
I sent him the wing
Okay.
feathers. Yeah, yeah,
Interesting. Wow. Interesting story. I'm not sure what else we have on this. Okay,
yeah,
here's
yeah.
so
And
what's
this
going on here?
this is from the thermal camera. I have no idea what this is, and
You're
you
talking
know.
about the streak?
Yes, because I
Hmm.
sent you two pictures. You can see it. It's actually comes in from that side, and it actually kind of rises. It's
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah. And these are just screenshots. I mean, this thing just literally goes flying through the frame. And you and I both know you've watched birds 100 times. You know what they look like in a thermal camera. This is not a bird, but I don't know what it is. I have
Wow.
no idea. I have no
Flying through
idea.
the air, almost
Yeah.
leaving a trail behind it.
Yes.
Hmm.
And got a heat signature. What
Yeah, and
what the
this
heck
is
is
at
that?
night, I assume.
Yes.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Okay.
Sybilla. That's like so many things. I don't know. I've seen some weird things on thermal that I couldn't
Yeah.
place what it was at all, but I know they're fast, but that's not a Sasquatch. That's whatever that is. Maybe it's something that a Sasquatch threw across, knowing that it would be caught on the thermal. I don't know, but
That's
uh,
quite possible. That's quite possible. And I wish that we could have gotten that other video to work for you, because you could
yeah, me
see,
too.
yeah,
Me
you
too.
could see. I'll try to get that into another form.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the crate. This is the feeding crate. This is kind of a typical. Sissy used
Hmm.
to feed him pancakes, so I used to do the same sometimes. I'd make a big stack of pancakes and put lots of syrup and put apples and peanut butter and stuff like that.
And would they take all of it?
Sometimes the entire plate would be gone,
Okay.
like out of the crate. Sometimes it happened a couple of times that I would like double plate it because it was so syrupy, and so I double plate it and put it in the crate, and then the top plate would be taken and the bottom plate would be left. Or sometimes they take both of them and then bring one of them back.
Well,
And
think
then
about this, that they, other than berries, maybe fruit when they can get it, they don't have sweet in their diet.
yeah,
So that must be a treat for them, the syrup especially. But
yes, yeah.
um,
And you could always tell when it was raccoons, because raccoons would make it would just be a massive mess, including even the paper plate would be obliterated. I mean, you could always tell. There was no question about what took it that night. If it was clean and I mean like licked clean. Yeah. And I found peanut butter jars that way too.
And that's exactly how Dennis got one of the blood samples for the Ketchum study, was doing that on a sterile ceramic plate with a couple of pieces of glass glued on there, and they licked it like they always did and cut their tongue and left a blood smear, which sounds cruel, but that small cut would heal quickly. It's just interesting. So did you put stuff every night out there?
Sometimes I did. Sometimes there would be, like in the winter time between like late November to January, there was very little to no activity at all. Like it was very, very quiet in those months, and then it would start picking up again when it started warming up. And I did have the house slapped once. 2 a.m.
Was there much snow there in Tennessee? I mean, Kentucky?
Yes, there would be. There would be on occasion. Yeah. Yeah. And I would, of course, always go out. In fact, there was a time, and Nathan was living there at the time, when we had snow, and this van was driving really, really slow by the house.
Interesting. Whoops.
Unmarked van was driving really slow, like back and forth between my neighbor's house, and it would stop in front of my driveway, and then it would go to my other neighbor's driveway, turn around and come back. And so I thought, well, that, it kind of puts you,
Yeah.
So I got the thermal camera because we watched it, and it went down. There was a neighbor maybe 200 yards away, and she was an elderly lady, and we knew that she lived by herself. We watched that van pull up into her driveway. So I was very alarmed. So I pulled out the thermal camera, and I stood by the porch and watching to see what was going to go on there, because we were at, really our finger on the trigger of 911. So as I'm looking, something ran between my neighbor's garage and the forest, like something, just like that. There's a white upright thing runs right through the frame.
While you're looking.
While I'm looking, to see what's happening with that unmarked van. And Nathan was standing right beside me, and I just kind of did that. He goes, "What?" I said, "I just saw a Sasquatch run through the frame." So that next morning we got out, to look for tracks in the snow, and we absolutely found them. And they were just on the other side of my neighbor's garage. And the funny thing was, he had seen them, multiple times sitting on his porch swing, looking out that way. He'd seen them walk right along his fence line. So, and I
So what happened with the van? Was it?
I think it was delivering some medication or something to her. I don't know. It just, one person got out, and then it went away. So I guess it was okay. But, and I never, you never would have known that Sasquatch was there if I had, if that, one of those.
Because was it night when this happened?
It was at night. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes it more suspicious with a vehicle driving around at night.
Yes.
Yeah. So this I've got to hear this story.
So Nathan was still living with me, and this carpet was placed there because I guess the house, the kitchen was built in like an earlier part of the house, and then they added this bathroom and another bedroom, and so there was about a half-inch like difference between the old area and the new area, and everybody was hitting their toes on that. And if you hit it barefoot, man, it was painful. So I put got this little carpet square to keep us from killing our feet on this thing, and it had been there for a really long time. Well, one morning the stove is literally just right there, and I'm making coffee, and I just happened to look down, and there's this impression on the rug, and it's not even going the direction of travel. The direction of travel is that way. And and I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, because it was just I'd never seen anything like that before on that little carpet square. So when I heard Nathan coming out of his bedroom, I just stood right there, and he, it was, "Good morning, Mom," and then I said, "Look down," and he looked down, because I wanted to. I know my son very well. Like, I know his tells. I know when he's lying. You know how you are with your kids, man. You know them. And he looked down, and his eyes got as big as saucers, and he was like, he was like, he started cussing. He said, "You mean they're coming in the house?
They're in the house."
What? And he got really upset. He goes, "The doors were locked, right?" And I said, "Yes, we always, that's a routine thing you do. We always check the doors at night." And yes, the doors were locked. And yes, this thing left an impression right there, so we would see it. And I actually put my foot, you can see my foot I try to leave an impression on it also. And I had to like really wiggle my toes and really wiggle my foot.
Is that a barefoot footprint of yours?
Yes.
Okay.
And I try to wiggle so that I could make an impression, and you can see the size of my foot compared to that thing.
Wow. And so a thing with a foot that big, how could it even get in there without ducking its head down?
Oh, it would have had to, yeah.
To fit. Yeah. And so you're not even safe inside the house. I mean, they're coming in, walking around. I don't know if they came in during the night while you were there or while you were away, but
no, it was during the night. Yeah, it was during the night. But there was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff in that house that would move on its own. That happened multiple times. And I just, Jim, it's just like, okay, well, is this just paranormal activity?
Right.
And because there's ghosts here possibly. And so it's like, you don't know where if there's a line and what the line is.
Yeah.
And to me, this foot was like, okay, so this is the Sasquatch people doing this. Either that or they want me to think.
So, and again, the question begs itself, how did they get in there? Because if the door's locked, the door's still locked. Yeah. Did they just materialize inside? Again, this is not a gorilla. This thing can get in and out of a locked building without you even knowing how they did it. And so,
and it makes me wonder how many other people have experienced this very same thing, but they don't want to talk about it because they don't want people thinking they're crazy.
No, I agree. Because you would think someone's crazy. Yeah, Bigfoot came in my house and left a footprint on my carpet. Right. So this is your little campsite in the Cherokee National Forest.
Yeah, that's one of them. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I just I sent you that so people could see that was the size of the camper. That's the ding. The door is actually hiding where that ding was. That ding was just below that window, right behind that door. That's where, and that's right where I was sitting. That's right, because my little table, there's like a little bench seat right there, and that's where I was sitting. They threw it right where I was sitting.
And I'm telling you, you've experienced this too. Like in that situation, they'll be playful and they'll throw little pebbles, ding, 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 little pine cones, or they'll haul off and they'll whip something so hard it's like bam. And I've had them do that and hit a tree behind me and scare me to death. And I thought, man, I think if that hit me in the head, I'm dead. That would have killed me.
That's right. Yeah.
So that was to get your attention, but they don't have to physically accost us. Their aim is so good, they could just bean us and we'd be gone. And so
100%.
But they don't. They don't. Yeah. I've never heard of a person getting hit in a bad way by a Sasquatch throwing something at them.
I have heard of one person getting hit right here in the cheek, and I actually saw the bruise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're right. There goes my record.
But you're right most of the time. And I've been sitting, this happened in Oklahoma where 3 of us were sitting in camp chairs all facing each other. And a rock came over this big, berm area and literally rolled to my feet.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're amazing. And I love, I mean, I can say this. I love Sasquatch. I love them because They are fascinating to me. I love them because we can study them like you've done and I've done and so many others, and they don't hurt us when they could easily kill us. Walk in our house at night. I mean, you're in there in your bed. I mean, they could do anything they want, but they don't. And so it's like an adventure that just gets more and more interesting. And they do things that you just think, how did you do that? How did you do that?
Yeah.
And I didn't even detect it. And so, So always love interviewing you, Sybilla. Thank you so much for coming on. And you got the best stories, I'm telling you. Tell me when you're camped somewhere, and I'm going to show up at the campsite. Are you Sybilla Irwin? I'm going to disguise myself. Are you Sybilla Irwin? Yeah. Who wants to know? Do you ever have a weapon with you when you're out like that?
I absolutely. When I was camping by myself, I absolutely. I had a 38 right on my little nightstand.
Yeah.
And I had a shotgun, and
Well, I'll have to be careful so you don't pull one of those out on me. Who wants to know?
Yeah. Well, it's not so much for the Sasquatch. I don't think it's just for the
it's people.
Creepy people.
Yes, 100%. I carry him. I don't believe Sasquatch is going to hurt me, and honestly, I couldn't hurt him with the guns I carry. But it's for people or occasionally lions or bears, just to move them on, get them out of there. But
right. Yeah.
But anyway, well, thank you, my friend. I really appreciate this time, and you've given me a lot of your time. So
thank you.
I'm very grateful.
Well, I would love to go camping with you guys. Like I said,
you bet.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anytime y'all have a big outing, I would love to come.
Well, I don't do giant expeditions. I do small groups, but it would be awesome for you to come with a small group. So I'll let you know some stuff that we're doing this summer. And I know you've got responsibilities there with your mom. But should it ever work out, you would always be welcome to come join us. Always.
Thank you so much. And that's the same with you, because I'll get out in the field again eventually too.
Yes, you will. I'm sure you will.
Yes, I will. Yes, I will.
Thank you, Sybilla, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
What a great interview. What a great woman. Fantastic researcher, has really paved the way in so many different areas, not just her artwork, but her research alone. Camping in the woods by herself. Sybilla, you're an amazing gal. So next week, gonna have Dave on. I hope many of you tune in and let your friends know that Dave's going to be on the show. I know he's got a big following, and I hope many of you will be here to watch and listen. And until then, keep on squatching.